If you take a look at the Rhode Island census for 1886, as I recall, you can open it up to the section on Foster, and it will give you details of the rivers and the hills and the, details of the town. And under manufacturing businesses, there's a list including Ramtail Mill, and it says Ramtail Manufactory, and in parentheses it says haunted. So it's the only officially recognized haunting in Rhode Island.
Now, that was a site of a very famous suicide, which took place May 19, 1822. Peleg Walker, a former business partner in the mill industry.
Ramtail Mill was a cotton mill out in Foster, on the Pontiac River, and they had a disagreeable night watchman who seems to have been some sort of relative by marriage to the family who owned the mill, the Potter family.
Yeah, Ramtail Factory in Foster, if I remember rightly, one of the owners has a feud with one of the other owners.
What happened was, around 1822, the legend says he got into an argument where he was ousted from the partnership and relegated to night watchman.
And because of what's believed to be financial problems, he took his own life.
By the time he had died, he owed the factory about $500 in 1822. That's a good amount of money.
At one point, this night watchman, Peleg Walker, says to the brothers, one day you will take the key to this mill from a dead man's hand, which is a weird sort of threat.
The legend was, he said, someday you will have to take the keys of the factory from the pocket of a dead man.
Then one day, the mill was locked up when the workers came to get to work, and Peleg Walker was not there waiting for them at the door, and they break the door down and they find Peleg hanging from the rafters, having hanged himself overnight, and sure enough, the key to the mill was in his hand or in his pocket, depending on the version of the story that you've heard.
And they find his body attached to the bell rope.
His body was discovered the next day when the mill bell failed to ring.
And on the morning of May 19th, 1822, the bell that he was supposed to ring to summon the workers from the mill houses right next door failed to ring. So they had to break into the factory because it was closed, and when they did, there was Peleg hanging from the bell rope, keys to the mill in his pocket. They buried him up on a rise above Hopkins Mill Pond in the Potter plot, and a few nights later the bell started ringing at midnight.
Shortly after his suicide, the bell started ringing on its own. So the bell rope was removed, the bell still continued to ring, so the bell itself was removed.
And this would happen for a few nights until they removed the rope. But the bell continued to toll at the witching hour until they had to remove the bell altogether.
And supposedly even after that, he still roamed the mill at nighttime. Workers reported seeing Peleg's unusual silhouette passing by the window, still carrying a lantern.
And some people saw it and recognized that this is Peleg Walker himself after his death.
A little while later, they thought everything was calm. A little while later, they were woken at midnight by the whole factory running. Every loom, every spindle.
There were a number of odd stories about things that happened after that. One story has people waking up in the middle of the night and rushing down to the mill where all the machinery is running full tilt in the middle of the night when it had all been locked down before people left for the night.
A few nights later, they found it running again. The whole village was awoken by this factory running full tilt. This time, when they went to check it out, the water wheel used to turn the whole looms and spindles was turning opposite the flow of the river.
There were other stories about the mill wheel running backwards against the flow of the river. Things that were physically impossible.
There's an incident recorded where the wheel was actually rotating backwards against the current, which seemed an impossibility.
So this kind of freaked everyone out, and they started leaving.
Then, of course, people start seeking employment elsewhere because the mill is haunted by this former night watchman, and strange things happen. So people start looking for jobs elsewhere, and business declines. They eventually go out of business, and the mill was burned several years later.
Now, even to this day, lights have been reported floating within the area. Something that looks like a lantern floating along, which would have been what Peleg Walker would have carried.
And then, of course, I've talked to other people who are, again, believers who've been out there and report hearing the factory bell still ringing and seeing Peleg Walker's lantern light bobbing around.
But his ghost apparently appears or reappears periodically, and the bell rings at the factory, or the remains of the factory.
Now his ghost has been seen since, his ghost has been heard since. We've actually heard one night the creaking of a lantern going through the area of where the factory was.